Well, let's talk now about some updates regarding the National Defense Authorization Act, better known as NDAA. White House attorneys have been in and out of court recently defending the provision in the NDAA regarding indefinite detention, arguing that jailing Americans indefinitely without trial in some instances is necessary for the safety and security of this country. Back in May, federal court judge Catherine Forrest ordered a temporary injunction on this Section 1021 of the NDAA, questioning the constitutionality of indefinite detention. But when White House attorneys were questioned Monday on whether or not they have adhered to Judge Forrest's injunction, they were less than cooperative in responding. To help talk more about this, we're joined now by activist and journalist Tangerine Bolin, who's also a plaintiff in the case against NDAA. And Tangerine, tell me a little bit more about this latest news with the White House attorneys sort of being reluctant to disclose, about these questions on Section 1021.
Well, so I didn't attend the hearing last Tuesday, but I did have a briefing with our attorneys and several supporters who went to the hearing. And a few incredible highlights came out of that day. One is they added a new term, which was perpetual detention. That has a little bit more of a sinister connotation even than indefinite detention, which is bad enough already. Two, they actually stated on public record that even war correspondents could be indefinitely detained under the NDAA, which should send huge alarm bells off to every journalist everywhere. Three, they actually refused to define, once again, what associated forces means, and said that even if you're in the presence of al-Qaeda or another terrorist group, just walking by, I mean, somewhere in the vicinity, you too could be indefinitely detained. And finally, most interestingly, they actually came out and when Judge Forrest asked them to assure the courtroom that the NDAA Section 1021 had not been applied anywhere in the world as of the May injunction, they refused to provide those assurances. So,
well, let's break this down because that's a lot of information you just put out there. And I know, okay, so let's talk about, I mean, this is one of the most fascinating things to me when we talk about journalists, war correspondents. I know that the case is Hedges v. Obama. Chris Hedges being a journalist who says he himself could be targeted because he's had meetings, he's had dinners and lunches and coffee with people considered to be, part of terrorist groups or associating with terrorist groups. And he was just doing his job. We've had him on the show several times. Talk a little bit about this, what this means, in terms of journalists trying to get information out there in the future.
Well, it's actually quite distressing because it's criminalizing an aspect of journalism. If war correspondents can't do their jobs, or if it's left to the United States government to determine whether they're independent enough or not, and refusing to define what that even means, then it's quite chilling on First Amendment speech.
So when you talk about also what happened last week, which is the Obama administration sort of refusing to answer the question about whether or not they've actually been abiding by this injunction, what are the implications here?
Well, Judge Forrest actually turned around when that occurred and said, you do understand that the United States government would be held in contempt of court if that's the case. And unfortunately, we can't prove whether the NDAA Section 1021 has been applied or not. So that may be a fight we don't want to get into. But if we could prove it, we certainly would go that route. And the implications, lawlessness at the upper echelons of the federal government. I mean, if they're not obeying a federal judge's injunction, that's lawlessness. I mean, it's no less than that.
I know, Tangerine, you're a plaintiff in this case against the NDAA. I guess tell us why you feel, sort of on a bigger picture here, this, bill, this piece of legislation signed on New Year's Eve has such an immense potential to impact, the future of where this country's headed.
Well, I can definitely speak from my own experience that the moment that was signed into law, I just felt this deep sense of dread. I had defended WikiLeaks, I had dealt with them personally and directly, and frankly, the language of the law, I think, leaves people like me and many other people directly in the crosshairs of the NDAA, which is absolutely unacceptable. I'm exercising my First Amendment rights and my rights to be an advocate for civil liberties. So I think it just poses a grave threat to the last of our intact rights and liberties. And I think that a lot of people agree with this and are just as disturbed as we are. And secondly, I wanted to add that the last brief that the government attorneys submitted, they painted me and my co-plaintiffs as basically enemies of the United States for having dared to bring this case forward. And I mean, I think we're patriots. So.
Along the same lines, I mean, certainly here at RT, we have been covering this case pretty exhaustively. But for some reason, this continues to get very minimal attention from the mainstream media. And I know, the National Defense Authorization Act doesn't sound very sexy. I know also that, we're in election season, and this is not an issue that will drive a wedge between the president and Mitt Romney. They essentially, from what I understand, would have the same opinions about this. I mean, why, though? This is something that affects everyone in this country. Why do you think no one's talking about it?
I think that's a great question. And I mean, maybe it's just not a sexy enough issue. I don't know. It's not exciting or something. Obviously, to us, it's exciting. And it's been an incredible saga, especially if you're able to be there in court. Mainstream media just really seems to be reporting on frivolous issues. I mean, they're more concerned with celebrities and, I mean, inanities at this point than they are with critical news. And so, unfortunately, I think it's a systemic issue, and we really need to obviously encourage our mainstream media to get back to what matters.
Yeah, certainly one thing that those who are following this have even said is that this has the potential to ruin and separation of powers by sort of moving this aspect of detention away from the judicial branch under the executive branch. These are huge things that are happening right now, and we do appreciate you keeping us posted. I know you tweet about this quite a bit. Tangerine Boland, founder and director of Revolution Truth in Portland, Oregon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.